And we are back live on this Monday edition of InfoWars Nightly News, a day that will live in infamy, the 26th day of August 2013. The Secretary of State, John Kerry, gave an incredibly deceptive and, quite frankly, when you're informed, diabolical 7-minute speech today that we're going to play and analyze here in a few minutes. And it's designed to target mainly an American audience that is not geopolitically informed and doesn't know what's been happening for over 2.5 years in Syria, where NATO and the United States, that includes France, England, you name it, have injected over 100,000 foreign fighters from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from so many other countries that are al-Qaeda in over 60% of the cases. That's admitted. They are engaging in incredible atrocities across the nation. And 3 times in the last 2 years, they have been caught staging chemical attacks. They've been caught. Even mainstream news admits in the back of the paper, okay, they staged it. It's the type they used, they did it to blame Assad and the Syrian military so they can take over. Now, I want to be clear from Alex Jones's perspective, and I know my crew's perspective because they're informed, and I've talked to them. We don't support Assad. We don't have a dog in this fight. But as George Washington said, we shouldn't be involved in foreign entanglements. And I've interviewed Syrian nationals that are even anti-Assad, and they say the groups the West is putting in charge of the rebels and the atrocities they're doing are at least 10 times worse than anything that Assad's father even did. So this is a big issue that we're facing here. And Americans have seen the lies of WMDs in Iraq. They've seen the lies that brought us to Vietnam and the Gulf of Tonkin. We've seen so many of these staged events, so many of these false flags. Now, I want to be clear as well. I believe that there was some type of chemical attack. The numbers aren't clear. The media has tried to claim already. Alex Jones says nothing happened. No, something happened in the middle of a battle zone in the capital city, Damascus, of Syria. And now Assad's come out and said today, why would I attack a bunch of civilians knowing that the West has said that that's their red line a year ago to the day, that they would come and bombard us and back up the rebels? Do I want to get arrested and killed? Do I want to be thrown out of power? Do I want to see every church in Syria burned to the ground because the al-Qaeda groups Obama is supporting have said that? This is what we're talking about. And I talked to a lot of special forces people on and off air, including today. And they said, yeah, none of this makes any sense. And the West is on record funding the rebels with even heavy weapons like tanks, heat-seeking missiles, you name it. So this is really incredible. But I wanted to show you 2 articles first on screen. One is from the London Telegraph that came out last night, where BBC News admits they put out a fake photo from a real massacre Saddam had been involved in from 2003. But they lied, the fake part, and said these were the thousands dead from Assad when it looks like max it was 100. Okay, so this is the type of war propaganda we're seeing. Now here's Yahoo from an Infowars.com article. You can link through to the Yahoo story. Flashback, Yahoo uncovered Syrian chemical weapons false flag back in January. And what they really did was just point to mainstream news that was covered in Europe where it was admitted. So the same jihadis our troops have been fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan are being funded by our government to go over here and do this, and they've been caught over and over again staging the chemical events. And Assad said over a year ago they're going to stage it and blame it on us. So Russian troops are there guarding the chemicals. So this is our in-depth special report tonight, so you can not believe us or believe Obama or believe the UN or believe Assad, so you can look at the history. We're supposed to believe rebel groups that have been caught 3 separate times staging smaller chemical weapons, nerve gas attacks, killing civilians? And civilians get attacked in an area they control in the capital city? This is a war crime that our government is being used for the globalists to take over this country. Just like they're back in the Muslim Brotherhood and al-Qaeda in Egypt and in Libya. It's the takeover of the Middle East by our supposed arch enemies. This is the destabilization program. Now I want to get to the real meat and potatoes before we analyze the Assad / Kerry situation and go over the amazing 7-minute diatribe of deception that Kerry put out today. I want to go through 5 different clips compiled by our news team with Darren McBreen. First off, we're going to show you the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter who wouldn't say who she was in the congressional committee. And it later came out no babies were killed in incubators. This was all a lie. And then we're going to show you the media grabbing a hold of that and pushing it. And then we're going to dovetail it with Kerry today, the Secretary of State, doing the same thing, going, these are horrible images, dead children, it's terrible. Go look at them. Look at what happened. Assad did this, even though we can't prove it. This is a replay of what we've seen before. So let's go to that first clip.
Our final witness is also using an assumed name, and again, we ask our friends in the media to respect the need for her to protect her family. And we finally call on Naira to testify.
I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died that day as well.
Yes, these men and their hypnotized followers call this a new order. It is not new.
It is not order.
It is not order.
No, it certainly isn't. So understand, she had only been in Kuwait when she was a baby. It all came out in newspaper articles a decade plus later. Remember, this was 20 plus years ago in 1990, that she hadn't even been there, and it turned out it was all a lie. Now let's look at what they did with that lie that ended up killing over 1,300,000 Iraqis in military deaths, 5 million total dead in the 20 plus years and the 2 wars later. So see, oh, babies on incubators didn't exist, but it created that emotion. And now we're dealing with millions of dead Iraqis, including at least 500,000 dead Iraqis that Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State, later said on TV was a good price to pay. So see, 500,000 kids, they don't exist, you know, so what? They don't matter. But then, oh, the babies, the incubators. Here's what they did with that information.
They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
I can only ask how these animals can commit such barbaric and inhuman acts and then deny that these acts ever took place.
Premature infants in incubators were sentenced to die by having the incubators removed.
The hardest thing was burying the babies. I myself buried 14 newborn babies that had been taken from their incubators.
Now is the time to check the aggression of this ruthless dictator whose troops have bayoneted pregnant women and have ripped babies from their incubators in Kuwait.
I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died that day as well.
They had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
Now, again, go look this up. It's on record. If you're a new viewer, none of that ever happened. None of that ever happened. By the way, they could say that the Egyptian military had released nerve gas and start bombing them too. They could say American patriots have staged terror attacks. Oh, they did that before. Oklahoma City and blamed it on us. The Boston bombing, they say, was the work of libertarians now on MSNBC. We played that last week. These are dangerous people, folks, who can stage stuff or provocateur events, or in the case of Gulf of Tonkin, just say something happened that never even happened, and absolutely attack and kill whoever they want. How did Hitler start World War II? He had his own troops attack their own military bases and blame it on Poland. That came out in the Nuremberg trials. It was called Operation Himmler. Look it up. And they hit places like Gleiwitz. But let's continue here with the next clip. Here is the former military general, top general of NATO, U.S. General Wesley Clark, admitting that he was in the Pentagon and they had a plan to hit 8 countries. And that's since been declassified. And that's what they're doing right now. Not for American security, not for freedom, but to install radical Islam in all these countries while using the threat of radical Islam to take our rights here domestically at home. Let's go to that clip.
I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. And I said, why? He said, we don't know. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir, he says, it's worse than that. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran.
And again, just a Freudian slip of accuracy. Actually, the plan that's been declassified was 8 countries. He was seeing 7, but to be clear, it is 8. So this is what's going on here. Now, let's go to Colin Powell. You remember the anthrax? Turned out those trucks were sold by the British to pump up hot air balloons for surveillance cameras on the Kurdish border, just like we have on the Texas border with Mexico. And they knew what the trucks were. They knew they were in weapons quarterly chains, but they lied and said, here is the anthrax they're making in the trucks.
But how much longer are we willing to put up with Iraq's noncompliance before we, as a council, we, as the United Nations, say, enough, enough. The gravity of this moment is matched by the gravity of the threat that Iraq's weapons of mass destruction pose to the world. One of the most worrisome things that emerges from the thick intelligence file we have on Iraq's biological weapons is the existence of mobile production facilities used to make biological agents. Let me take you inside that intelligence file and share with you what we know from eyewitness accounts. We have first-hand descriptions of biological weapons factories on wheels and on rails. The trucks...
And then they show the blow-ups of the hot air balloon trucks, the hydrogen balloon trucks, actually. I mean, this is so frustrating to watch those gangsters like Negroponte and others behind him. It's just funny to them. And they do it over and over. And Americans that are pro-war watch these countries being blown up like it's a fireworks display or something. I mean, this is the height of sickness. And believe me, folks, if we write off all these poor third world countries to be murdered and butchered and handed over to the jihadis, you think we're going to be safe here in America? By the way, those Arab countries have abortion outlawed. They don't kill their babies there. We've already had 53 million American babies killed here since Roe v. Wade. I mean, it just shows how we'll put up with anything. Let's go to this final clip before I get to the Kerry piece. This is Iraq war lies, which has now been proven to be premeditated lies about WMDs. And again, the idea is if a country has WMDs, we're going to come bomb you and invade you and kill you, even when you don't have the WMDs. But under international law, you're allowed to have weapons of mass destruction. The truth is the globalists just don't want anybody else to have them but them. Let's go to this clip.
The regime is seeking a nuclear bomb.
It concludes that Iraq has chemical and biological weapons, that Saddam has continued to produce them.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass death.
But we now know that Saddam has resumed his efforts to acquire nuclear weapons.
There are al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Saddam Hussein cavorts with terrorists.
Saddam Hussein possesses biological and chemical weapons. CIA officials warned members of the president's staff the intelligence was not good enough to make the statement, Iraq tried to buy uranium from Africa.
Everybody knows that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction.
I have every reason to believe that the intelligence that we were operating off was correct.
Why did you lie to get us into a war that was not necessary and that has caused these kinds of casualties? Why?
Well, first of all, I haven't lied. It appears that there were not weapons of mass destruction there.
You said you knew where they were.
I did not. I said I knew where suspect sites were, and we were just...
You said you knew where they were, near Tikrit, near Baghdad, and north, east, south, and west of there.
We know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit and Baghdad and east, west, south, and north.
You, along with President Bush and top administration officials, made a total of 935 false public statements in an orchestrated attempt to take this nation to war. This study has found that you, Madam Secretary, made 56 false statements to the American people, where you repeatedly pump up the case that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Isn't it true that you had intelligence that cast doubt on your repeated claims that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction?
No, it's not true, Congressman.
And, of course, it's all now come out that it was total lies. And now the Democrats are going along with this because it's their guy, and the Republicans went along with it under Bush because it was their guy. They don't belong to you. They belong to Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and the mega banks that are taking over the few countries that aren't under the New World Order right now. This is global governance by the corporatists that are anti-free market that now run the planet. And the plight that Syria is under is the plight the United States will be under down the road when the UN breaks this country in half, setting up Aslan and all the other ethnic balkanization plans they have to play us off against each other. I've studied their geopolitical system. This is what's happening. Now, I wanted to give you that background, and the team put that together just in the last few hours after Kerry made his speech a few hours ago. So we're only showing you a fraction of the evidence. This is just what we grabbed in a few hours before the nightly news. This is all on record. Now we're going to go to his full 7-minute speech, and I am going to sit here breaking down what he's really done while he talks. Okay? This is teleprompter free, folks. You can check out everything I'm going to lay out here. I'm going to expose this guy. But the most chilling thing he says here is that if you question what happened with those attacks and say that it wasn't the Syrian government and the Syrian opposition to the foreign rebels and the invasion, the Syrian opposition to the terrorist, that you are somehow involved in all this. Don't let us ever tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Remember Bush said that? They do not want you questioning any of this stuff. When the same rebel group, I just showed you Yahoo, and BBC got caught. It's like, well, that's what they do. They need help. They undoubtedly did it. Why would Assad do this saying they'll invade if he does? I mean, this is ridiculous. Well, how does it help him militarily to gas his own people in their capital city? Anybody that knows how propaganda works or has one brain cell knows that's pure bull. Look, in the last 10 minutes, I've broken down some of the historical background here, and I almost get to the point of being hysterical, because I watch America and our treasure and our name being pulled through the mud to commit these atrocities for NATO and the globalists all over the world with the same WMD lies time after time. But in this case, the rebels that have been caught staging these events have done it again. And when we show you this speech, it is amazing how he collectively says it's our moral responsibility to do this. And how dare you question? But then he never even says they have proof. He says it doesn't matter. It's children have died. Do what we say. Let's go kill 100 times more children. And this is the heart of global governance. This is 2013. This is how it's done. This is all about the UN invading countries. Notice in this speech, in this deception he rolls out, that he says we need to move in and lock down these weapons worldwide, as if just having these weapons means you're going to be overrun and killed. It's any weapons that can be used to defend yourself against a wide-scale invasion. The UN, the globalists, don't want anybody to have weapons. Not individual Americans, nobody. They want everybody disarmed so they have the monopoly of force. Now let's go to this press conference, which clearly signals they are intending to start using cruise missile attacks, ground troops, you name it, very, very soon. They are intending right now to go ahead with this yet again. And then it'll be Egypt next. Oh, they've got WMDs. We've got to invade them. They won't let the Muslim Brotherhood burn down all the churches. It's just watching our government aid al-Qaeda and radical Islam to commit atrocities and overthrow governments and clearly stage chemical attacks to be blamed on the opposition. It just shocks me how evil they are, and that knowing how the government works, these al-Qaeda forces run by the State Department, that's who runs these operations, just like Benghazi. Undoubtedly, if this was a false flag, and all evidence indicates that, it's probably somebody like John Kerry that gave the order. Now, we're going to go to this in a moment, but what I'm trying to say here is that I got really freaked out today watching the press conference live because I've studied geopolitical systems and how the command structure works and who's managing this covert war. It's the State Department. When I'm watching this, the reason I get so upset and the reason I'm in a controlled rage right now is that I realize John Kerry's the prime suspect for probably orchestrating this fake chemical attack that killed all these people, this false flag. He's the prime suspect. And that's what's so sick, is that these guys love to get up there and blame something like this on a government they want to overthrow so they can carry out mass slaughter and deindustrialization of a country, part of their Agenda 21, and he's the prime suspect in actually planning the operation. Out of everybody, he's the type of guy in the command structure that would actually default do this. So we're probably hearing the mastermind of the chemical attack that's been blamed on Syria up there saying, look at these children. As a father, it's so hard. Go watch that video again. It is so sick. I almost puke. I almost turn this table over. Knowing that these are such known liars makes me so angry. We've got to stand against this. We've got to speak out against this. We've got to get congressional investigations. We've got to come together for justice and realize these false flags are being used to take over the world. Let's go to his speech. It's unbelievable.
President Obama and his entire national security team have been reviewing the situation in Syria. And today I want to provide an update on our efforts as we consider our response to the use of chemical weapons. What we saw in Syria last week should shock
these psychopaths use our humanity to shock us in our emotions, so these psychopaths can get us to go along with what they do.
Civilians, the killing of women and children and innocent bystanders.
No proof Syria did it.
Chemical weapons is a moral obscenity.
You're a moral obscenity.
By any standard.
You're a known liar.
It is inexcusable, and despite the excuses and equivocations that some have manufactured.
Excuses? Equivocations?
It is undeniable.
It's been confirmed you guys have lied.
The meaning of this attack goes beyond the conflict in Syria itself.
It's about global government.
That conflict has already brought so much.
It's about disarming everybody that could ever oppose you.
This is about the large-scale, indiscriminate use of
Goldman Sachs and world
civilized world long ago decided must never be used at all.
The civilized world, that's the super technocracy.
Even by countries that agree on little else. There is a clear reason that the world has banned entirely the use of chemical weapons.
Like Agent Orange dioxin.
There is a reason the international community has set a clear standard.
There's a reason you put fluoride in the water, a known chemical weapon.
Many countries have taken major steps
Harvard studies to brain damages.
These weapons. There is a reason why President Obama
There's a reason the White House science czar wrote a book about brain damaging us with it.
The proliferation of these weapons.
Because you're a bunch of murderous, psychopathic bastards. And I'm so sick of watching you commit crime after crime and running al-Qaeda.
That this
John Kerry,
norm cannot be violated without consequences.
Liar.
And there is a reason why, no matter what you believe about Syria,
no matter what you believe,
all peoples and all nations
people
who believe in the cause of our common humanity,
our humanity
must stand
should
up to
support
assure
them
that there
injecting
is
Al-Qaeda
accountability
rebels to try to
for the use of
overthrow the
chemical
government
weapons
and
so
kill
that
all
it
the
never
Christians.
happens again.
Why do they love killing Christians so much?
Last night, after speaking with foreign ministers from around the world about the gravity of this
Foreign
situation,
gang leaders.
I went back and I watched the videos.
Here he goes.
Videos that anybody can watch.
You're the
on
prime
social
suspect.
media. And I watched them
You're
one
running the
more
covert
gut-wrenching
operation.
time.
You covered up Benghazi.
It's really hard to express in words the human suffering that they lay out before us.
It's hard to describe
As a father,
what you've done.
I can't get the image out of my head.
I can't either, you
of a man
bastard.
who held up his dead child, wailing while chaos
that you throw in our
swirled around
face,
him.
but you love aborting
The images
American
of
babies.
entire families dead in their beds without a drop of blood or even a visible wound. Bodies contorting in spasms. Human suffering that we can never ignore or forget.
God, these people.
Anyone who could claim that an attack of this staggering
They're going to stage
scale
terror
could be
attacks in
contrived
America
or
and blame
fabricated
libertarians.
needs to check their
Just like
conscience
MSNBC did
and
last
their
week
own
to us.
moral compass.
This is how they
What
take
is
over.
before
They
us
stage
today
crap and blame it on their
is
enemy.
real.
It's elementary.
And it is compelling. So I also want to underscore that while investigators are gathering additional evidence on the ground, our understanding of what has already happened in Syria,
CIA-run
is
Doctors
grounded
Without
in
Borders
facts,
and the Al-Qaeda
informed
resistance.
by conscience and guided by common sense.
Oh, the conscience.
The reported
Oh,
number
the
of
goodness.
the reported symptoms of those who were killed or injured, the first-hand accounts from humanitarian organizations on the ground,
Just like the babies in the
Doctors
incubators.
Without Borders,
Gulf of
and the
Tonkin.
Syria Human Rights Commission,
WMDs in Iraq.
These all strongly indicate that everything these images are already screaming at us is real.
Screaming at us? What, your Al-Qaeda people got the green light?
Moreover,
Obama said a
we
year
know
ago, if Assad uses chemical
that the
weapons, we'll
Syrian
attack him,
regime
and then magically it
maintains
happens
custody
in
of
rebel-held
these chemical
areas?
weapons. We know that the Syrian regime has the capacity to do this with rockets.
Yeah, they have legal
we
and
know
lawful
that the
chemical
regime
weapons.
has been determined to clear the opposition from those very places where the attacks took place. And with our own eyes, we have all of us become witnesses. We have additional information about this attack.
Oh.
And that information is being compiled and reviewed together
Just
with
like
our
the fake
partners,
dossiers on Iraq.
And we will provide that information in the days
Take some
ahead.
more Botox, you ugly punk.
Our sense of basic humanity is offended.
You don't have
not
basic
only by this
humanity,
cowardly
you
crime,
known psychopath.
but
You're
also
the
by the
coward.
cynical attempt to cover
You're
it up.
cynical. You're a piece of
At
trash.
every turn,
We're sick
the
of
Syrian
slick
regime has
psychos like
failed to
you.
cooperate with the UN investigation.
We see through you.
Using
We
it
see
only
who
to
you
stall,
are.
to stymie the important
You're the
effort
prime
to bring
suspect.
to light
You.
what happened in Damascus.
And the
in dead
world
of night.
knows.
And as Ban Ki-moon said last week,
head of the UN,
the UN investigation will not determine who used these chemical weapons.
Oh, see, doesn't matter.
Only whether such weapons were used.
Either way, we
A
got to
judgment
invade, see?
That is already clear to the world.
Because the last 3 times they got caught doing
I spoke on
it.
Thursday with Syrian Foreign Minister Moallem.
Now it doesn't even
And I
matter
made
if
it
they
very clear
staged
to
it.
him that if the regime, as he argued, had nothing to hide, then their response should be immediate. Immediate transparency.
It was.
Immediate access.
And that wasn't good enough.
Not shelling.
So they claim, oh.
Their response needed to be unrestricted and immediate access. Failure to permit that, I told him, would tell its own story.
They're so mad their Al-Qaeda's getting beaten.
Instead, for 5 days, the
So
Syrian
mad.
regime refused to allow the UN investigators access to the site of the attack.
5 days. It
that
hadn't
would
been 5
allegedly
days.
Exonerate them.
And now there's evidence it's the
Instead,
rebels
it
that shot
attacked
it.
the area further.
No,
shelling
no.
it and
It's the rebels that have been
systematically
kidnapping
destroying
UN on record.
That is not the behavior
Show the,
of a
it's on
government
InfoWars, the article.
that has nothing to hide.
Unbelievable.
That is not the action of a regime eager to prove to the world that it had not used chemical weapons. In fact, the regime's belated decision to allow access.
When's the last time chemical weapons were officially
too late
used?
to be credible.
1980s.
Today's reports of an
Saddam
attack on the UN
under CIA
investigators
advisement
together with
against
the
Iran.
continued shelling of these very neighborhoods.
The last time
only
chemical
further
weapons were
weakens
officially
the
used
regime's credibility.
was with the U.S. government with
At
Saddam
President
in
Obama's
the Iran-Iraq
direction,
war.
I've spent many hours over
These
the last
guys
few
right here.
days on the phone.
They're the
with
last
foreign
ones on
ministers
record to
and
do
other
it.
leaders.
Right there.
The administration is actively consulting with members of Congress.
Oh, yeah.
And we will continue to have these conversations in the days ahead. President Obama has also been in close touch with leaders of our key allies, and the president will be making an informed decision about how to respond to this indiscriminate use of chemical weapons. But make no mistake, President Obama believes there must be accountability for those who would use the world's most heinous weapons.
Like you, the prime suspect?
Against the world's most vulnerable people. Nothing today is more serious, and nothing is receiving more serious scrutiny. Thank you.
And then they'll let the public beg and beg and beg. Oh, we've got to invade. Why won't they do anything for the children? Remember back when they attacked Serbia? British news, in fact, we can pull this up. Just type in British fake concentration camp on Serbs or British war propaganda Serbia. And they had a UN facility with all the food in it that they wouldn't share. And they showed a guy with tuberculosis and cancer on the fence. There were fat guys next to him wanting in. And they said, here are the victims inside a Serb camp. It's like the famous yellow journalist head, William Randolph Hearst, with his newspaper chain, told Remington, the famous painter, I don't care if you go to Cuba. Just paint me pictures of atrocities. You manufacture the paintings. I'll manufacture the war. And it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. Just like the sinking of the Lusitania to get us into World War I. The Germans put ads, full-page ads saying, this is an auxiliary ship of the Navy. It's bringing weapons in from the U.S. We're going to torpedo it. And when they wouldn't torpedo it, they had the Lusitania drive back and forth in front of the U-boats. Back and running military flags, by the way, to let everybody know it was legal to shoot them, to torpedo them. This is the type of stuff they do. And look, I get angry about this because John Kerry really is the prime suspect. Our government, hijacked by these criminals, undoubtedly is behind this. There's no reason Assad would use those weapons and target civilians with them. And the rebels have been caught. But I've already said all that. You know, the reason I say so much is because it's painful to know that they're probably going to bomb the whole country again. And then the Al-Qaeda will go in and massacre every minority group that's there, just like they always do. If you're black in the country, you're just dead out of hand. If you're a woman going to college, you're going to be probably stoned to death. If you're not sexually mutilated, they're going to do it. If you're an Alawite minority, Muslim, you're dead. If you're Christian, you're dead. If you're Jewish, you're dead. That was a truly ancient, multicultural, 3,000-year-old system. And the globalists are just doing everything they can to destroy every sovereign country that they don't control. And it is a giant war crime, and it's being done in our name, ladies and gentlemen. And so that's it for this extended breakdown. Great job of the crew getting all this together for the expanded nightly news tonight. Great job, Jakari Jackson, with the news. We are now going to end this transmission, but I'll be back on the radio tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, breaking all this down. If you have seen this evidence, if you're concerned about this like I am, please get this video when it's later posted to the archives of prisonplanet.tv and on YouTube, and please get it out to everyone you know. Because if we don't stand up for basic justice and basic reality, we're all doomed. I'm Alex Jones signing off for this edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Please, even if you don't believe in God, meditate, think about ideas of how to get justice. Pray to God to protect the little children, no matter whether they are Wahhabist or Shiite or Alawite or Christian or Jewish. And all the minority groups that are in that country, because they're all going to be killed. The videos are all online of them chopping off the heads, blowing up the churches. They killed 40,000 plus Africans, it's estimated, in Libya, black Africans. The jihadis did. I mean, and our media won't even cover it. They are going to kill people from end to end of that country. They're already doing it. And it's another giant lie that's going to happen, another huge fraud, with them showing dead kids on TV to push the agenda. And I think prayer is something that'll really help here, but also calling talk radio, writing your own articles about it, spreading this video, calling Congress. And here's my final point. Everybody I talk to, whether they're left, right, libertarian, black, white, doesn't matter. Everybody I talk to sees through this. All the military personnel I talk to, whether they be officer, enlisted, or non-commissioned, they see through it. And so it's almost like even if we don't buy into it, this whole event is to make it look like, well, they put out more BS and somebody bought into it. The truth is, they're doing whatever they want, regardless of what common law, common sense, the Bill of Rights, international law says. So it's almost like this whole massacre is a diversion from the fact they're already invading with heavy weapons with the rebels. It's just like a excuse so they can debate us and say, oh, you're for nerve gassing the children? It just gives some fake moral authority to these cold-blooded psychopaths. I'm tired of the reign of the psychopath. I'm tired of them getting away with anything and everything. It's time for good men to stand up. It's time for good people of conscience to take action. Because as Thomas Jefferson said, all that evil men and tyrants need to flourish is that good men do nothing. And this evil has taken place because too many good men that know the truth have decided to sit on their butts and have decided they're powerless. Well, not me and not my crew and not our viewers. We're taking action with 1776 worldwide, with revolution against the New World Order and its beast system. We will restore, with God's help, the Republic. And even if we fail, we'll be an example to generations to come that some stood against evil. That's it for InfoWars Nightly News.
Now you can watch Alex Jones live at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
You can also browse the network, the InfoWars Nightly News,
and over 60 movies and documentaries all together in one place.
You can watch the Alex Jones radio show live as it happens.
So check it out, Infowars.com/show.